as I don't know if people are aware, but when the bioreserve came together, the consultants that were hired said that to maintain the basic, just the basic wildlife, plants and animals of southeastern Massachusetts, actually this is the Bristol, Narragansett lowland forest. That's what they call this, mostly oak, hickory, and white pine, and holly. We have American holly, comes about up to Cape Cod, right? So to maintain this, and the animals and insects and all that other stuff that live here, you'd need 16,000 acres. So when the bioreserve initially came together, which consists of the trustees of reservations land, the city of Fall River's watershed land, DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation, state forest land, and fish and wildlife management land, that came to like 12,000, 13,000 acres. So since then, they've tried to pick up the state agencies and the city of Fall River also with Community Preservation Act money, have tried to pick up surrounding parcels to protect the water supply for the city of Fall River, and also now it's a regional water supply also. And so we now are up to 16,000 acres, and hopefully we can get a little more because development continues, and oftentimes it's not wisely done. So if you open this map, we look here now. This is wonderful actually because we are a rapidly developing section of Massachusetts, and many things are gone. For example, heath hens are extinct. Elk used to be here. Wolves, mountain lions, right? And northern bobwhite quail, which were around when I was a kid, are gone.
Were there bears too?
And there were bears also. Matter of fact, there's a bear story, but I won't go into it. It'll take too long, and we have to take a walk. Yes.
How long ago were those animals? Yeah, my hands are
Oh, back in the 1800s. Matter of fact, the last heath hen died on Martha's Vineyard. His name was Ben. Yeah, and they have a statue of him on Martha's Vineyard where the school children go out every spring and they blow, the male heath hen makes a call. It's sort of like if you blow across the top of a soda bottle, woo, woo. And every year the kids go out and they go to the statue and they're given bottles and they make the call of Ben's call in memory of Ben, because poor Ben every spring would be out there going, whoo, whoo. But he was the last heath hen left. Very sad tale. Okay. So the bioreserve now goes wonderfully. Hopefully it'll go this way toward Plymouth, because if we could get over to Plymouth County, right? It's all now in the corner of Plymouth County. Lakeville, right here. Freetown, Dartmouth, Fall River, a little bit of Westport. Hopefully we can extend down the Westport River. So this is the latest iteration of this whole thing, this map here, and you can come and explore and walk around anytime you want. The only side that's you're excluded from, unless it's you get permission from the water department, Fall River Water Department, is the west side of this way it's slashed line here on the west side of Blossom Road, which we're on over there, or on the other side off Meridian Street. That's to protect the water supply. So there's that map. Now, if you look at this, just quickly, because we did this, the other day we walked, I have to have notes, because I'm getting old. Yes?
You said ideally you want to connect to Plymouth?
Okay, there's a plan, an old Harvard
No,
University.
but I'm wondering,
Go ahead.
the oldest and most expansive pine barren area is around the Plymouth and through Miles Standish and stuff. Is it possible to connect, to have
Yes.
a more continuous?
Yes, and actually we're working on that.
Great.
Al Lima, I don't know if you know Al, he was a planner, and he's
Does
active.
he work at the Miles Standish?
No. But anyhow, he's been active. There's Pine Barrens. What's the name of the organization? I can't think of it now. Pine Barrens Group, anyhow, out there that's been, protecting the Pine Barrens habitat because it's unique and disappearing also. But the idea is there's an old Harvard study that shows a greenway from Narragansett Bay to Cape Cod Bay, and it would be this. It would hop over to Assawamsett Pond Complex, which is the New Bedford and Taunton's water supply and protected land. Then it would go over to Rocky Gutter management area. Then it would hop over to Miles Standish, and then over to right over to Pine Lands, which there's a lot of development in Plymouth, but right over to Cape Cod Bay. And there's a state park there. I can't think of the name of it. That would give a link. You know the state park right up Route 3 there?
I know what you're talking about.
But anyhow, it's over there. Okay, just quickly. Well, that's
Ellisville.
Ellis. No, well, maybe that's Ellisville. That could be it. Okay. Last time we walked Mowry Path. The Mowry Path is the old Indian trail that King Philip and Weetamoe and their followers took to escape from the militia, which was following them from Tiverton, where there had been the battle of the Peace Field. Then they hid out in the Pocasset Swamp, which is between now Route 24 and Fish Road, if you're familiar with that area, when you're right on the Tiverton-Faultville line, the big swamp back in there. And then they came east of the pond. Now, the Watupper is one water supply. It's one pond. It's all one. It's the second largest. Anyone know the largest? What's the largest natural pond in Massachusetts? Tom? Assawamsett. So the Watupper is the second. And before they had crossed the Narrows with a road, they actually crossed up this end, up the north end, because Freeman's Purchase, which were free men from Plymouth who purchased all the land from the Quequechan River to Stacy's Creek, which is in Berkeley, a Summit line. Excuse me. This is, a matter of fact, we're on part of the Freeman's Purchase right now. Anyhow, there's 26 people, I believe, that were the freemen. This is all Freeman's Purchase. And during King Philip's War, the Indians came across the Narrows, as I mentioned. They had a wade, you can wade across. They came up into here. They stayed at King Philip's Spring for 3 days. This would be, the war started in April, but...
War started in June.
No, I'm started. You're right. Yeah.
June 26th.
Yeah, straighten me out here if I get mixed up. Let me see. Oh yeah, June 20th, say of 1675, and anyhow, stayed 3 days and then followed, which we did last time, up the Mowry Path to Winslow's Point, which is right here, and there was a ferry. Wham Sutter, which was a son of Massasoit, married at the time to Tatapanam, who had been married numerous times. How many times, Dave? 6, 7?
Oh, at least.
At least. And they sailed across in his ferry. There was an Indian ferry. When Freeman's Purchase, which is all this, was sold to these 26 freemen of Plymouth Colony, Wamsutta gave a little exemption here for this Indian ferry that operated. So the Indians all went across in the ferry to the other side of the Taunton River, and then they went northwest.
Heads up, folks.
Then they went northwest up into Nipmuc country to rally the Nipmucs. Now, just quickly, if I mentioned the... I'm just going to mention Groundnuts because I had talked to if you read the Green Futures announcement of this, it mentioned Groundnuts. Okay, if you read Mary Rowlandson's account of her having been kidnapped by the Indians and dragged up all the way through Lancaster, she mentions groundnuts, and they're mentioned constantly. So I decided to research groundnuts. You can actually go online and buy groundnuts and plant your own. But they grow. I tried to dig some up last night, but it was too cold and I didn't have time. But they grow along waterways, and that's what they survived on. It's amazing how you're fighting a war in the winter. The Indians grew corn, squash, beans, Three Sisters, and colonial folks had grain fields. But everything was destroyed as they moved along. So they were forced. So Mary mentions a number of times how hungry she was, and how a kind person would give her some groundnuts to eat. So groundnuts are very important. You can find them along any water source in the summer, and maybe we'll do this and actually pick some groundnuts and try cooking some, eating some. But also I found out, just a little aside, when Sherman marched to the sea, Civil War, the South was devastated. Groundnuts. That's what they ate. The Depression, when people were eating Hoover hogs, President Hoover hog is armadillo. They called them Hoover hogs. They also ate groundnuts. So a groundnut is an amazing plant, and I'm just it's somewhat startling that they weren't they haven't been commercially developed, you know, or
It must be too good for us.
you don't like well, they're not good. They're very good. They're like Jerusalem artichokes, right? All right, enough of this. We want to walk. It's getting cold. So that's the idea. We're going to follow the path that King Philip and everyone else took.
Okay.
And we're going to start right now. And Roger is going to lead us off in a second.
Those are the deer colors. Don't want to do that.
Thank you.
Enough dogs here this week.
This is King Philip Spring. Yeah. Is it flowing? Do you see it flowing?
I haven't seen it flowing in months.
No.
I haven't seen it flowing in a long time either, but it should be with all the rain we've had. But this is, anyhow, supposedly, this is where they camp for 3 days in this area. And they have swamps. You have the, as I mentioned, King Philip Swamp over here and Blossom Brook Swamp over there. Atlantic White Cedar Swamps.
It's kind of low, huh?
And no, it's about, usually though you can see a bubble, but I just think there are too many leaves in it right now. Boiling Spring, which is on your map. If you look on your map on the east side, we've done walks up there. And that one used to, at least you can see it, little bubbles, little boiling. That's why it's not hot. I mean, it's Boiling Spring because the water churns that gravel, you know. And there were multiple ice houses all around the city. Although any freshwater body of body of water for ice purposes, to make ice.
Barrington too. There's a site when you're on the East Bay bicycle path. There's a site that had the ice house there around the pond.
Well, the Mount Hope Bay used to freeze. They would bring. There's some photos somewhere. I don't know, historical society maybe. Of them moving houses across on the ice from one side to the other. We don't see that anymore.
I heard stories of horse-drawn sleighs and everything.
Yeah,
Going
right across Mount Hope Bay.
Yeah.
Eels in the winter form these big balls in the mud of the river bottom where they hibernate. And these eel spears, they're not just like with a shaft and then the tines and pointed. The points recurve. They curve back. And you remember, you see them? Yeah. And a lot of people know how I was on a house. I was visiting someone on the Cape, and they had two of them on each side of the fireplace on the wall. You know, but anyhow, back then they used to use them until fairly recently, before the climate moderated. You'd plunge them into where you knew these eels were hibernating, and when you'd pull it back up, they'd get hooked on the recurved tines, and they were semi-dormant, and they'd fall out onto the ice and kind of freeze there, and they'd take them home. And at Plymouth Plantation, if you go to Plymouth Plantation, you'll see on the houses of the pilgrims a wire pot, a wire trap that were eel traps, and they were much sought after. English were big. Matter of fact, it wasn't the Atlantic eel, but Henry VIII died from what?
Too many eels?
Too many eels. One of his favorite dishes was lamprey pie, lamprey eel pie, and he ate all. He loved it, and it killed him. But anyhow,
They taste like chicken?
just like chicken.
Like snake.
But eels. I'm trying to think. Tapping maple trees, all sorts of things. What else? Cranberries, right?
You'd have to be starving to eat one of those.
All sorts of things came from the Indians. Yeah. We've been on Dead Man's Trail. This is a corduroy path, and it goes to Blossom Road. So if we went down this trail, you'd cross King Philip Swamp, which is where that spring feeds. You'll see it goes right under the path. There's a culvert under the path, and then you come out to Blossom Road. If you walk south, you'd come to your cars. If you'd walk north, you'd come to where we're going to end up near Mowry Path, which the Indians had taken. But it's an interesting path to walk, just like we've done here, because on both sides of Atlantic White Cedar is a rare cedar that only grows along the coast, right along the coast from like southern Maine, very close to the coast, all the way down to Florida, just about Florida. And that's what the early colonial folks, the typical Cape cottage, they were shingled with white cedar shingles, Atlantic White Cedar. Now white cedar comes from the West Coast, from Oregon.
They used to make organ pipes out of that wood.
White cedar?
Yeah.
They grow. I can see that, because if we see some, we might meet up with some later. But anyhow, down there, and it's called Corduroy Road, because in the winter they would come out to cut the white cedar, because then you could get out in the swamp because the swamp's frozen. So they would lay the small white cedar, the small white cedar, and it looked like the whale corduroy. Anyone have corduroy pants? Yeah. Take your pants off. Let's see. Anyhow, they lay them down across the path to get the equipment. They even, matter of fact, some of these cedar swamps in the winter, the men lived out here, just like lumberjacks in Maine or wherever. They lived out here for the winter, cut the logs, and they'd run rails to have a little railroad that would pull the white cedar out. So it's an interesting, it's different than this way we're walking, in other words. And so it's on your map, and if you ever want to take a walk in there, you can do it. Everything's been cut over millions of times. And I was telling Dave earlier, this isn't the same forest that was here when the Indians were here. This is a white pine. It's king's pine. They used to brand them, make a mark on them because they were used for the masts of the British Navy. One of these white pine. And this is a big old white pine that was probably on somebody's boundary line. But even this isn't really large. The largest white pine in New England is the Big Jake pine. You can Google it. It's in the Mohawk State Forest on Route 2 in the Berkshires. And there's a whole grove of them. And they can go up to 150 feet, almost 165 feet in height. That's like the height from the Taunton River up to the Braga, the top of the Braga Bridge there, or the Mount Hope Bridge. They're amazing trees, and they're the largest tree species east of the Mississippi River. Unfortunately, they have all been cut down innumerable times, but anyhow, many times, and and this one remains simply because it was lucky, I guess.
I think there's an effort that every year, I was there last year, and they're studying those trees. They get them all tagged.
Up the bridge, yeah.
Yeah, the guy that was hiking with us is a friend of his that's doing the work.
They use laser finders now to determine the height. Yeah. And they keep every year they go and measure it. There's a Leverett. I can't think of his name. Anyhow, there's also an old tree society or whatever.
Yeah, there's a small grove of old growth trees there.
Yeah.
I think it's a peace something they call it.
Yeah, they call it a peace grove. Anyhow, and all the old trees are named of all things after Indians.
Yeah.
The old Jake pine, the tallest one, is some old Indian.
Where's the oldest one located?
Mohawk Trail State Forest.
Okay, that's where I was.
Charlemont.
It's probably in that grove then.
Yeah. Yeah. Jake pine.
See that oval in the top of that tree?
Oh yeah. See that oval hole?
Yes.
Near the top of that broken tree?
That's the pileated woodpecker.
Old nest.
He might find a better one. It's right in the sun.
There's another one down the road.
Pileated woodpecker is the largest woodpecker in the United States now. The ivory-billed was larger, but was a southern woodpecker, and they're extinct. They keep looking for them, but they haven't found any yet in Louisiana and Arkansas and places. But anyhow, pileated is common, but not around here because it needs big trees and big woods. And they've just returned. I mean, you can find them in the Berkshires. You can find them up in New Hampshire. You can find them many places, and they're common. But they've just returned to the bioreserve here, and that's because now we have 16,000 acres, a lot of it big trees, and they're the woody woodpecker guy. Woohoo! You know the red thing on its head, black, and they're about the size of a crow, so they're quite large.
I thought the ones that had the red head were the smaller, and the breast is like speckled.
Well, you get the red-breasted, you get the flicker, you get the downy woodpecker, you got the hairy woodpecker, you got the yellow-bellied sapsucker. They're all woodpeckers. You forgot one.
Yeah, now I can see it. Because you just
Sorry, I couldn't help that. Anyhow, but the pileated is back. Not as big as the other one though. You can notice how the bark starts to change. The look of the bark.
Yeah, so that's not an Atlantic white pine.
No, it's just a white pine.
White cedar was.
Eastern white pine. Atlantic white cedar.
Yeah, right.
We might see some down by the pond in a little while. All right, this is actually Mowry Path. Mowry Path went from Buzzards Bay up the river, and the same thing. Matter of fact, even we had mentioned that most of the native travel, Indian travel, was by canoe, right? A dugout canoe. And however, to get to Plymouth, they had to do a land portage there too, up at around Halifax, I guess, Dave, would it be Halifax? And then down the North River, or in that vicinity. So mostly they traveled by water, but they did have paths, and this was one of the old Indian paths again. And this part of it is Yellow Hill Road in the watershed of the Watuppa, and we'll see where it goes. Well, actually, there's no longer a road, and is the small piece of Mowry Path that still exists that we walked last month.
This is the road that has the fire tower on it?
Up here
Yeah.
is Tower Road,
Yeah.
goes up to the top, highest point in southern Bristol County, Copacut Hill.
Yeah, we did a bike ride up
Yeah.
there one time, right?
Break Ridge, all right, go up here.
No, we're gonna go up Woodchuck.
I'm sorry, Woodchuck.
We're going up Woodchuck.
Well, don't
This is Break
confuse
Ridge.
me. All right. Next one. Hey, like Daniel Boone, we never get lost. Just confused for a day or two.
Yeah, there you go.
This is Signee Oak, which is interesting. You'll see on your map, Signee Oak Trail. And no one knows how it got its name. Like Dead Man's Trail is kind of obvious. Clint Davis Trail, obviously someone named Clint Davis lived around there or worked out there. Indian Bend Trail, because it comes off Indian Town Road. But we're now on Signee Oak. And on some old deeds, it says, it's listed as Sign of Oak. So perhaps there was a sign on an oak here, or they used an oak as a marker, right?
the name.
Like if you look at old maps of Fall River, you'll sometimes see, or any of this area, you'll see buttonbush tree. I know on the Flint, not the Flint, the Globe. Right near Globe Corners, there's on an old map, it shows a little round circle and it says buttonbush. Not buttonbush. Not button. It's buttonwood. But, oh my God. Well, yeah, it's a sycamore tree in short, and buttonbush. Yeah, sycamore. So they use trees as markers too. So who knows? But this is Signee Oak.
So this is nice. We've got a map and we've got Signee Oak and, you know, whatever that trail was.
Woodchuck.
Woodchuck. Are there any markings in here? So,
Oh yeah.
like if I were to look, you are here,
wait,
and I
wait.
could take it out, look, and
Where is it?
Say, oh, here I
Okay,
am.
come here.
Okay, all right. All right, yeah.
Okay.
Queen Gutter 1.
QG stands for Queen Gutter.
Okay.
Queen Gutter was an Indian actually, but Queen Gutter Brook is
Yeah,
over there.
okay.
So everything in this area is QG. As you know, like the sex is on separate trees. In other words, you have to have a male and a female, and the female hollies have the red berries, and the males don't. So this would be a male. Now, the hollies are very sensitive to fire. And again, besides being cut multiple times, there are also a lot of fires over the years. And they die right away, whereas oaks and other things will sprout back up, you know, and ferns and stuff.
And they
But
grow
there are
very
some,
slow.
yes, they grow very, very slow. They have really neat, if you're a woodworker.
They're dense wood.
Yeah, dense white wood. I met a man who made a chessboard out of maple and holly. The holly was inlaid.
It was like white.
It was beautiful. But anyhow, there are some large ones. We passed a large one. We forgot
Right
to.
by the big pine tree.
Right near the big pine tree, there's a big. There are some big, huge ones.
And
But
we're
those
going to be
have been-
passing some here too. On
You know,
this trail, there's
we'll-
quite a few.
okay, we'll mention it if you see some.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
And of course, just three things. Black birch. The branches aren't low enough. That's the thing. That's what winter green originally came from. What's that gum we were talking about?
No, those are good.
And if you, they used to tap. You can make birch beer.
Yeah, that's brush, actually.
Anyhow, if you smell this here, if anyone wants to come over and sniff this, it's not sharp. You'll smell the wintergreen.
Yeah, we saw the wintergreen. It has red berries. It grows.
You smell the wintergreen?
Yep, smells like
That's what they used to tap.
Yeah, it smells
You
good. I
can
love
make
that
birch beer.
smell. I love that smell.
There's a deer straight. A bigger one. Oh, look at this deer straight. Come on. The better one. You know, if you get down, if anybody wants to, what they do is, they pour with it, and then they pee in it. And if you might see a track.
I thought there was one there, but that looks like a dog track.
That looks like a deer track there.
Oh yeah, right there.
Maybe, but if you smell, sometimes you smell the deer.
I believe you.
Was it worth it?
It's very faint. You know, it hasn't been by here recently, but but that's the bucks showing off. They're looking for does.
Like will the dog go nuts sniffing that?
It might, if it's some dogs, domestic dogs are sort of young men with Those are Atlantic white cedar. Can you see how straight they are?
And they're kind of light.
They're small.
The wood's light.
The wood's light, but it's very dense.
Yeah, they're beautiful trees.
Flew back in the morning.
Do they have antlers?
We went quick.
Yeah, that's what they often do.
All those points.
Well, it could be a doe waiting for the buck to come along.
We're not about.
Yeah, that green lump that comes out was used to be Spencer Borden's estate. It's a tributary of Signee Oak. Yeah. Wait a minute. The blossom is south of the headquarters, Wrightman Farm. It's like a pecan, same family, but a pecan grows further south, Illinois, south, and they're these are smaller, but you can make a pecan pie. You can put them in chocolate chip cookies, real good.
When do they fall?
I'll have to make some cookies. That's the these are whoops.
That's the meat.
Okay, yeah, this is the husk. The husk's in 5, Roger, 4 or 5, the husk pieces. The husk fits in the husk, like that.
Yeah.
And it's green until it falls. And then this, the hickory weevil ate the nut out, see? The whole.
Yeah.
If it didn't, you have a whole one?
Yeah.
Do you mind if we crack it?
Nope.
When do they fall?
September.
That was your shoe.
Yeah, see the,
Like a hazelnut.
well, no, more like a
Just
walnut
a pecan.
Okay, yeah.
or a pecan. Hazelnuts are
It
different.
tastes a lot like
Yeah.
a pecan.
Yeah, hazelnut is a round thing. But
Yeah.
see how the,
Oh, yeah.
it's in there, the same thing?
Showing the camera.
Here you go, Louisa. Take that home and make a cookie.
It looked like an hazelnut.
Not a hazelnut is round in 2 halves. Blossom Road's named after an early settler. He used to employ Indians, Christian Indians, to work his farm. And this up here is Wrightman. We walked up Wrightman, our cars are parked the Wrightman Trail. Up here at the fence, you'll see the foundation of the Wrightman Farm. And these were the 2 farms, the only 2 farms out here on this side.
I sing.
The Bar Reserve is a remarkable place, and not only natural history, which is what I'm mostly interested in, but also human history. And to think that people have been actually living out here, going back as far as 12,000 years ago when the glaciers started to retreat and Homo sapiens moved following the mammoths and all the other things following the glacier, the melting glaciers. It's just amazing. It's just boggles your mind.
Yeah.